The first time I heard the word Bayanihan, I thought it was the name of a village or a type of government program. I'd only been in the Philippines for 4 days, and even in that short time, I already realized this was the kind of country that had 1,000 words for things I'd never experienced before. And this was one of them. I came from Russia, the colder part, near Lake Baikal, where even in the summer, the wind is thin and sharp. People talk less, nod more, and mostly live life indoors, away from others unless there's a reason to gather. When I arrived in the Philippines, the first shock wasn't the heat or the chaos or even the food, it was the people. People everywhere, laughing, shouting, helping each other carry things, handing strangers food, giving directions to people without them even asking. It felt like I had entered a country-sized family reunion where no one was related, but everyone acted like they were. My name is Yelena. I came to the Philippines to escape something, a life that felt too big and too empty at once. I had no plan, no itinerary, just a backpack, some savings, a return ticket, and a heart that was quietly sinking for years. My Russian friends told me I was crazy. Who goes to the tropics alone? Who goes where they don't speak the language and barely know the culture? Who leaves Siberia on a whim? I didn't know how to answer then, but maybe I do now. I came here to learn something I didn't have the words for yet. Something I couldn't have found back home, where winters kept us apart and pride kept us silent. I didn't know the word for it, not yet. Not until the day everything got washed away. I had been staying in a small coastal barangay in Samar. I picked it randomly, simply because the Airbnb listing had mango trees and the host smiled with his whole face in the picture. His name was Mario. He and his wife, Lainey, ran a small sari-sari store right under their home, which was made of wood, painted in bright pastel blue, slightly leaning on one side. It looked fragile but somehow still alive. The way Filipinos built things baffled me, like they always knew things might break, but they never stopped rebuilding them. The people in that barangay didn't treat me like a foreign guest. Not even on the first day. No one stared too long like I was an exotic animal. They greeted me like I was the cousin who'd just come home from living abroad. I wasn't prepared for that. In Russia, you're not part of anything until you've proven yourself. Here, I was part of everything until I proved otherwise. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of frying garlic and fish, to the sound of roosters who didn't understand time, and to kids running barefoot outside on muddy ground without a care for shoes or safety or schedules. There was always something being built, someone washing laundry by hand, neighbors talking over thin fences. That was life, exposed, noisy, interconnected. A human web. On my 4th day, Mario asked if I had heard the news. "Storm coming," he said, squinting at the small TV in his store. "Signal number 2 already." I had no idea what that meant. I asked him if I should leave. He gave me a half grin, half laugh. No need. "Typhoon lang po yan. Normal." Normal. That word should have calmed me. Instead, it made me feel something I wasn't prepared for. An unsteady admiration. These people weren't scared. They weren't panicking. They weren't even rushing. Back home, when something dangerous approached, people prepared like it was war. Here, people still gathered, still laughed, still ordered merienda, but the storm didn't wait. That night, the wind came. At first, it was strong but reasonable, like a warning. It made the coconut trees sway, the way you move your shoulders in a loose dance. Then the rain followed, thick and merciless. By midnight, the walls of my rented room were shaking and I heard yelling outside. I looked out and saw the neighbors, most still barefoot, moving things, carrying them from the street inside their homes. Bicycles, buckets, chairs, even chickens. I stood there watching from the doorway when Mario appeared out of nowhere with a flashlight. "Yelena, come down, we need help." I didn't even have time to think. I threw on the nearest shirt and followed him outside. The wind slapped me hard. The rain felt like pellets. I had never experienced weather that felt alive before, like it wanted to tear things apart. But what struck me most wasn't the storm. It was the people. Everyone was outside. Not hiding. Not frozen. Working, carrying long pieces of wood. Tying plastic tarps around windows. Helping the old lady from 2 houses down walk to Mario's house. One woman held her baby while handing out food from a bucket to people she didn't even know. A group of boys tied a rope from one tree to another to stabilize something. One guy climbed a roof with no helmet, no fear, hammer in hand. The house wasn't even his. "This is Bayanihan," Mario said, yelling over the roar of the wind. That was the first time I heard the word out loud. I didn't understand yet what it meant. I only saw what it looked like. A community moving like one body, each limb doing something different but serving the same purpose: survival. The storm raged for hours. I lost track of time. At one point, we were carrying sandbags and placing them at the bottom of doors. Then we were lifting a neighbor's fridge together. Then we were repairing something that broke. Sleep didn't exist. Panic didn't exist. What existed was movement, action. No one asked who needed help. Everyone just gave it, and then I saw it. The moment when everything clicked. A young man, maybe 18, was running toward us with a box of bread under his shirt to protect it from the rain. He wasn't wearing shoes. He wasn't helping his family. He was helping strangers. He handed out the bread like it was treasure and left before anyone could say thank you. Mario looked at me and nodded. Bayanihan. That word stayed in my head all night like a song I didn't know the lyrics to yet, but I could feel its meaning. By morning, the storm had passed. The sky was gray. The streets were flooded. Fallen branches were everywhere. A few homes had lost their roofs. Some stores were gone. A mountain of mud covered the road leading into the barangay. And yet, the first thing I heard wasn't crying. It was laughter. Someone cracked a joke about the neighbor's houseboat. A joke about how it looked like it wanted to sail away. People started cleaning without being told. Someone set up a pot outside and filled it with lugaw. Kids gathered around the puddles and splashed each other like it was summer. And the most shocking of all, no one blamed anyone. No one complained. No one cursed the world. They simply began again. Mario handed me a broom. "Let's go, Yelena," he said. We cleaned first, talk later. The whole barangay moved together like a single massive team. Someone fixed wires. Someone else nailed a roof back. Someone cleared the path to the Sari Sari store. One group started moving all the fallen coconut trunks using ropes and bare hands. The little kids gathered broken plastic containers and turned them into toys. I had seen disaster relief in Russia before. It was organized, serious, efficient, but cold. Everyone did their job, then went home. Here, the job wasn't just about repairing things. It was about repairing the people who lived in them, and that was the moment I realized something profound. Bayanihan doesn't just mean helping others. It means believing that their life is connected to yours, that their pain is your pain. Their burden is your burden. Their survival is your responsibility, even if they are not blood. Even if you just met, even if you can't pronounce their name, the Philippines didn't invent storms, but it invented a way to survive them that the rest of the world might never understand unless they lived through one, and I was living through it. I hadn't slept in nearly 24 hours. My legs were shaking. My clothes smelled like salt and rain and mud. But I wasn't tired. Something was moving inside me. Something I didn't know how to name. Not yet. In Russia, we have a word for community, sobchestvo, but it always felt like a concept. Here, Bayanihan was not a concept. It was alive. It was happening in front of me, and I was part of it. I didn't know how the human spirit could work like this. How people who had barely eaten and barely slept could wake up the next day and begin again as if nothing had happened. But that was the Philippines. I was starting to understand that. The morning after the storm, my feet ached from all the mud and broken stones hidden in the water. I was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, now stiff from rain and dirt. Even the air felt heavy, still soaked with sadness and something else. A quiet, suspended grief that hadn't settled yet. But the people didn't pause. The barangay woke up early. Before 7 a.m., there was already movement. Laughter between broom strokes, children dragging fallen tree branches to a side pile, men hammering wood planks into what used to be walls. I stood there looking at them, Mario, his wife, the neighbors, even kids who probably hadn't slept more than 3 hours. And I felt both small and honored. It was like watching a giant family rebuild its home, one nail, one prayer, one mango tree branch at a time. It didn't feel like a disaster anymore. It felt like a gathering, a ritual. Even the storm felt like it had become a silent guest. They didn't tell me what to do. They just handed me things, and I understood. A brush, a pail, a bag of nails, a tarpaulin sheet. I watched, I learned, and I helped. I didn't know exactly how to help, but that didn't matter. No one worked alone. I had never seen people include a stranger like that. as if I had always lived here. And then she arrived. Her name was Minda. She was about 60, short, with denim shorts and long gray hair braided down her back. She was carrying a huge black plastic bag and a ladle. Someone shouted, "Ate Minda!" And she grinned like sunshine had landed on her face. Then she opened the bag. Inside was food. Rice wrapped in banana leaves, fried tiny fish, something that smelled like ginger and comfort. She didn't ask who was hungry. She didn't collect money. She just shouted, "Kain na! Eat, eat!" And as if on cue, workers stopped for a moment. They wiped sweat from their foreheads, washed their hands, and sat on the closest available thing. A cement block, a tree stump, overturned bucket, or just the dusty ground. No table, no plates, no napkins, and just shared survival. I sat too. I didn't know where I fit. I wanted to help, but part of me felt like an intruder. I watched as people passed around steamed rice, fingers touching fingers, hands touching hands, no one embarrassed or apologizing. Then Mario looked at me and lifted the food toward me, as if asking, "You're part of this too, right?" I nodded and smiled a little too wide. He laughed like he knew I was overwhelmed. "Eat po, para malakas ka ulit. So you get strong again." I wanted to ask something, but he already knew what it was. Bayanihan doesn't stop during disaster lang, he said. It continues after, rebuilding, eating together, praying together, laughing after crying. That's all part. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not yet. I simply said, "In Russia, people don't eat like this." "What do you mean?" someone asked, listening with a plate of rice on their lap. "We eat together at home. With family. But not like this?" Mario said, filling in the gap. "Yes, not like this. Here we eat where we are needed." Later that day, the word Bayanihan grew again in meaning for me. I was clearing broken wood from a narrow, muddy path near the water's edge when I saw a child standing waist-deep inside what used to be someone's house. The walls were gone. The roof was missing. Only the cement foundation remained. The girl was maybe 9. Her eyes were locked on a floating pink slipper near her. She was quiet. Too quiet? Like something had been taken from her voice. I walked closer. "Are you okay?" I said in English, half afraid she wouldn't understand. She blinked at me and pointed to the house behind her without speaking. That's when I saw the rest, a group of kids, maybe 4 or 5 of them, standing on wood planks and plastic bins, surrounded by water, carrying things in silence. A backpack, a pillow, a damp teddy bear, 1 slipper, a school notebook, a half-open box of crackers, no cries. No tantrums, just a slow, painful obedience to whatever life had handed them. I had seen children cry over broken toys. These children didn't cry, because the broken toy wasn't the worst thing that had happened. My throat closed. I wanted to do something, anything, but I didn't know what. The girl finally spoke. Tatai said, "We wait. Wait for what?" I asked. She shrugged, like even adults shouldn't be expected to have answers. Then, suddenly, a voice from the road. "Tulungan natin sila. Help them!" 4 men jumped the small cement fence and walked straight into the water. They didn't ask permission or wait for instructions. They picked up bags, school supplies, soaked blankets, even wet toys, and carried them up the road like treasure saved from a sinking boat. The kids followed, still barefoot, still quiet. Then someone handed them dry towels. Someone else handed them pandesal. A woman pulled out a giant thermos of hot chocolate. Another one gave them clean shirts, probably hand-me-downs. I don't know when it happened or who started it. But the kids finally smiled. Not the big smiles you see in commercials, just soft, tired ones. Like the weight on their small chests had lifted even for a few seconds. That's when I felt it. Not the storm, not the mud, not the exhaustion, but something deeper and unexpected. I felt myself break. Not in a bad way, in the way glass breaks when it's holding in too much pressure. I walked behind the house. I leaned on a hot cement wall still damp from the morning rain. And I cried for those kids. I cried for the home they lost. I cried for the people who didn't wait to be told to help. I cried for a country that had nothing and gave everything. And I cried for myself. For all the years I spent thinking independence meant doing everything alone. That night, I lay in my room feeling both heavy and awake. I didn't know how to sleep after seeing that. After helping rebuild a roof. After laughing with children who had nothing left except dark skies and shared food. The barangay was still alive outside. People were swapping stories. Someone was playing an old guitar. Another one was brewing coffee over a gas burner on the street. Someone had brought out a radio that was miraculously still working, and in that moment I heard the word again. Bayanihan. This time it wasn't Mario or a neighbor saying it. It was me. In my head. In my breath. In a space inside me that didn't exist before this week. That's when I understood something I never knew I would. You cannot learn Bayanihan through explanation. Only through disaster. And healing. And shared survival. It wasn't a thing Filipinos did. It was a thing they became every time life tested them. And for some reason, they didn't resent the test. They treated every storm like proof that they were still alive, still human, still capable of holding each other. I wanted to believe people like that existed in Russia too, deep in our quiet places, under our cold rivers, behind our silent hospitality. But I had never seen it in action like this. Maybe that's why I was here. Maybe that's what I had been running toward, not away from. 3 days after the storm, we had cleared most of the mud. A truck arrived carrying relief goods: noodles, tuna cans, blankets, water bottles, powdered milk. I was helping unload when Mario walked over and handed me something, a green shirt. "For you," he said. It looked like any other shirt, except for one word printed on the front in bold white letters, Bayanihan. "You helped, Yelena," he said. "So now you're part of this too." I didn't know what to say, so I just said the truth. "I don't think I've ever been part of something like this." He nodded. "You are now." That night, the sun set behind the collapsed roofs and broken trees, leaving a quiet pink light over the barangay. Children were playing again. Women were washing clothes by hand. Men were fixing the streetlights with borrowed tools. The sky still looked bruised. But the people didn't. They were rebuilding what mattered first: each other. That's when it happened. That's when something else entered the story. The part I never expected. The part no one planned. For the part that would change my life forever. Because something was coming. Not another storm. Something worse, something no one could prepare for. And this time, it would be me who needed help. It started with a sound I didn't recognize. Like metal laughing in the wind. A twisting, echoing voice that came from somewhere deep in the trees. Somewhere too low to be thunder and too high to be footsteps. I had been asleep for less than an hour. The barangay was quiet except for distant dogs and a few motorbikes on the road. The storm was over. The night was still. But that sound amid shook. Something inside me. Then I heard the second sound. Louder, closer, angrier, cracking, splitting, falling. It wasn't wind, it was the land. I sat up so quickly I hit my head against the wooden headboard. My eyes weren't fully open, but my heart was wide awake. I pulled on my slippers and grabbed my flashlight. The power was out again. Then someone screamed, not in fear, in warning. May Lindahl. "Earthquake!" The room moved, not like wind moves a curtain or like tired feet shift on shaky ground. The whole house moved. The cement floor rolled like an angry tide under my feet. Glass rattled. Plates fell and shattered. A stack of books slid off the table. My suitcase tipped over. The walls groaned like they were alive. The earthquake hit fully, sudden, violent, 1,000 invisible fists pounding the earth at once. I had never felt something like this. It was like the world was being pulled from under me. I staggered to the door and grabbed the handle, but it didn't open. The ground jolted again, harder. I lost balance, hit my shoulder against the corner of the cabinet, and knocked over a glass jar that smashed against the floor. I tried the door again. It still wouldn't move. "Help!" I yelled, but my voice felt too small. The room was shaking like a beast trying to throw me off its back. I hit the door harder. My wrist throbbed. Then I heard it through the chaos, through the shaking and falling and breaking. "Yelena! Where are you?" Mario's voice. "I'm here," I screamed. "I can't open the door." "Don't move," he shouted. "We are coming. Just stay low." Another violent tremor hit. The ceiling creaked. I looked up just in time to see a crack form, like a scar being carved across the concrete. I dropped to my knees and threw my arms over my head. I had seen video footage before. Buildings collapsing, rooms flattening, bodies covered in dust and debris. I had always watched with the safe distance of a screen, Now I was inside one of those stories. The shaking didn't stop. It just changed. It went from angry to insistent, like it wanted to keep the world awake. Then suddenly, a bang, metal against metal, the door. Mario was outside. So was Ramon, the barangay captain, and maybe someone else. I heard shouting, then a hammering sound, then something lifted, and finally, the door opened. Halika na, come. Ramon pulled me up by the arm. We ran. Not outside, but down the stairs and into the street, where the ground was still trembling, but nothing was falling. I could see people in pajamas, people holding flashlights, people carrying children, people crying, people praying, people barefoot, people silent and waiting. The shaking slowed, then stopped. It was over. Just like that. It was over, but nothing was over, because then we saw the hill, the one behind the barangay. The one we thought couldn't move. The one everyone trusted to stay still. It didn't. Not just the soil, the trees, the rocks, the water canal. Everything slid like someone pulled a curtain made of earth. And underneath that curtain used to be 3 small houses. One of them had people in it. Someone screamed again. Not in warning this time, in pain. Mario and Ramon ran first. Then the neighbors. Then people with shovels, lights, ropes, bare hands. No one waited for a command. No one asked for whose house it was. No one said, I don't know them. 3 children. 1 mother. A grandfather. Buried. I watched, frozen at first, as the community I had been helping just days ago now worked like a single organism again, but this time not to rebuild something broken, but to save something still alive. I tried to move. My legs wanted to join, but my fear held me back. I felt small. And then, as if Mario sensed I was drowning in my panic, he yelled out, Yelena! Help us with the lights. We need more. He needed me. Someone needed me. That was all I needed to hear. I ran. I didn't even think. I grabbed the portable lamps that had been charging in the community center. I grabbed extra batteries. Extension cords? I didn't ask where. I followed the voices. When I returned, the ground was torn like paper. Men were digging with tools and kitchen spoons in their hands. Women were holding blankets. Someone was calling names. Someone was shouting instructions. Then beneath the mud, a sound, faint, muffled. Small crying, someone was alive. The digging got faster, harder, more desperate. I held the flashlight steady in Mario's hands while he pulled away wet soil that smelled like earth and rain and fear. Then a hand appeared. A small one, then an arm, then a child. A boy, eyes closed, coughing, soaked in mud. But alive, the barangay didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They just worked harder, another hand. A girl this time. Crying, shaking, clinging to the first person who touched her. Then finally, the mother. But no movement. I saw Mario's hands pause. I saw his face change. His breath stopped. No, he whispered. Then someone said, she's breathing. Barely. But breathing. The grandfather was last. I didn't know him well. I had seen him on a plastic chair outside his house every afternoon playing sunka with the kids. Now he was still. Too still. No movement. No breath. But someone in the group, a woman with short hair and big sandals, knelt down beside him and whispered a prayer. Then she closed the old man's eyes with her hand, and when she looked up, she said the words I didn't expect to hear. We did what we could. No anger, no blame, just love, even for the things they couldn't save. I felt a weight fall into my chest. Not just grief and something else, something deep. Something that finally finished what the storm had started. I broke again. Fully this time. Because I finally understood what Bayanihan was. Not just help. Not just unity. Not just sharing food or repairing roofs or laughing through pain. But this. It was carrying the weight of someone else's world as if it were your own, without being asked, without being thanked, without keeping count. And it was beautiful. The next day, after the aftershocks finally stopped and everyone could breathe again, I didn't go back to my room. I stayed where the people were. On the street, on the curb, near the makeshift kitchen, beside the sleeping children. Everything was different now. I didn't feel like I was visiting a country. I felt like I belonged to one. People kept thanking me for helping last night, even though I had done so little compared to them. And every time I heard it, Salamat, Yelena, I felt my throat tighten. Because I didn't help them. They saved me. They saved me from my idea that strength meant solitude. They saved me from silence. They saved me from a version of myself that I didn't even know was suffocating. And I realized something that made my chest feel suddenly full. Didn't want to go back to Russia anymore. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So later that afternoon, when Ramon told me the barangay hall was doing a headcount for temporary relocation, that people were moving to the gymnasium in town, that others were going to relatives, that some were staying to rebuild, I didn't hesitate. I didn't look back at the small, damaged room I had been renting. I walked to his list, took the pen, and wrote my name, Yelena Morozova. Resident, Barangay San Emilio. Volunteer, I didn't feel out of place writing that. I felt whole. 3 weeks later, my tourist visa expired. I didn't go to the airport. I sat in front of the immigration officer, hands trembling, and said the words I never imagined I would say. I want to apply for an extension. I'm not ready to leave. He asked why. I told him the truth. Because I've learned something here I could never learn anywhere else. He raised an eyebrow. And what is that? I smiled and felt something warm settle behind my ribs. Like a new home being built inside me. Bayanihan, I said. He stamped my papers. 1 year later, I wasn't a visitor anymore. I was a volunteer coordinator for disaster response teams across the region. I spoke Filipino with mistakes, but with heart. I slept on floors, on benches, under roofs made of borrowed materials. I shared food with strangers who called me kapatid. Ate friend. I laughed with people who had lost everything, but still found reasons to sing. Cried with families who had to bury all they had. Left, and I lived in a country where I was never alone. Because no one here ever is. Russia raised me, but the Philippines rebuilt me, and that is how a disaster taught me something my whole life in the cold never could. You don't need to know someone to love them. You don't need to be asked to help. You don't need to understand everything to belong. You just need to show up. Like they did for me. Like they do for each other. Every single time. Because Bayanihan isn't just something Filipinos do, and it's something they are, and now so am I.